What if one brave girl's whispered word in court changed everything? Ariana's incredible journey from fear to finding a loving family will leave you speechless. If you're ready for a story filled with courage and hope, hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and tell us in the comments, where are you watching from? We'd love to hear from you. The grand courtroom was bathed in a cold, sterile light that reflected off the polished wood and marble floors. The atmosphere was thick with tension as 11-year-old Ariana Collins sat quietly on the bench next to her potential adoptive parents, Jason and Karen Blake. Dressed in a simple navy blue dress with her hair neatly braided, Ariana clutched her small hands tightly in her lap, her eyes darting around the room. Her legs barely reached the floor, but her composure betrayed a wisdom far beyond her years. The Blakes, seated beside her, presented a polished image, Jason in a tailored gray suit, Karen in a conservative blouse and skirt. To an outsider, they seemed like the perfect family. Their smiles, however, didn't quite reach their eyes, and their overly formal demeanor felt out of place. Across the room, Judge Ashley Hill, a composed and respected woman in her late 40s, adjusted her glasses and reviewed the file in front of her. She had presided over countless adoption cases, but something about this one felt different. There was a hesitance in Ariana's demeanor, a stiffness in her posture that Judge Hill couldn't ignore. "Let's begin," Judge Hill announced, her authoritative voice cutting through the quiet hum of the courtroom. She looked up, her sharp gaze landing on Ariana. "Miss Collins, I understand you've been living with Mr. and Mrs. Blake for the past 6 months. How has that been for you?" Jason and Karen both turned to Ariana, their expectant smiles feeling more like warnings than encouragement. Ariana hesitated, her eyes briefly meeting Judge Hill's before darting back to her lap. Her small fingers twisted together, the silence stretching just a second too long. "It's been fine," she said softly, her voice barely audible. Judge Hill leaned forward slightly. "Just fine. Can you tell me a bit more about your experience?" Jason interjected quickly, his tone overly bright. "Your Honor, Ariana's a bit shy in public settings. She's been adjusting well at home, haven't you, sweetheart?" He reached over and placed a hand on her shoulder, his grip firm enough to make her flinch slightly. Judge Hill's sharp eyes didn't miss the subtle reaction. "Mr. Blake, I'd like to hear directly from Ariana," she said, her voice calm but firm. Karen shifted uncomfortably in her seat but managed a tight smile. "Of course, Your Honor. Ariana, why don't you tell the judge about your new room? You love it, don't you?" Ariana hesitated again, her small frame shrinking slightly under their gaze. "It's nice," she mumbled. Judge Hill studied Ariana for a moment longer. Something about the girl's reluctance felt off, not the typical shyness she'd seen in other children during adoption hearings. It was deeper, more guarded. She glanced at Carrie Watson, the social worker seated near the front of the room, who also seemed uneasy. "Ariana," Judge Hill said gently, her voice softening, "this is a safe space. You can tell me anything. Are you happy living with the Blakes?" Jason and Karen both tensed, though they tried to mask it. Ariana glanced up briefly, her wide, dark eyes meeting Judge Hill's. Her lips parted as if she wanted to speak, but instead, she cast another nervous glance at Jason and Karen. "Yes," she said finally, though her voice wavered. Judge Hill's brow furrowed slightly. Before she could ask another question, a court officer stepped forward, handing her a sealed envelope. "This just arrived, Your Honor." "It's marked urgent," he said quietly. The judge opened the envelope, her eyes scanning the contents. Her expression shifted ever so slightly, a flicker of surprise, then concern. Folding the letter, she set it aside, her focus returning to Ariana. "We'll take a short recess," Judge Hill announced, standing abruptly. Her decision seemed sudden, almost calculated. "Ariana, would you come with me for a moment? Just you." Jason and Karen exchanged nervous glances but didn't object aloud. Ariana hesitated, looking back at them before slowly standing and following Judge Hill out of the courtroom. Once inside her chambers, Judge Hill offered Ariana a seat on the couch. The room was warm and inviting, a stark contrast to the cold formality of the courtroom. She knelt down slightly to meet Ariana's gaze. "Ariana, I know this must be overwhelming, but I need you to be honest with me. Are you truly happy with the Blakes? Do you feel safe?" Ariana looked down, her fingers twisting the hem of her dress. Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't want to go back." The words, though quiet, hit Judge Hill like a hammer. "Why not, sweetheart? You can tell me." Tears welled in Ariana's eyes, but she didn't cry. Instead, she looked up, her expression filled with a mix of fear and determination. "They're mean to me," she said softly. "They make me stay in the dark if I do something wrong. And they said I can't tell anyone, or no one will believe me." Judge Hill's heart sank. The letter she had just read now made sense, and her resolve hardened. She placed a reassuring hand on Ariana's. "You've been very brave to tell me this. I promise you, Ariana, you're safe now. I won't let anyone hurt you again." As she rose, Judge Hill reached for her phone. "Call Carrie Watson," she instructed her assistant. "And get me law enforcement. This child is not going back to those people." Back in the courtroom, Jason and Karen sat stiffly, their anxiety barely concealed. When Judge Hill returned, her expression was unreadable. "The court is taking immediate action to investigate this matter further. Ariana will not be returning to your care at this time." The Blakes erupted in protest, but Judge Hill raised her hand, silencing them. "This is not up for debate. Bailiff, escort them out of the courtroom. Ms. Watson, please ensure Ariana is placed in a safe environment immediately." As the Blakes were led away, Ariana watched from the doorway of the judge's chambers. For the first time in what felt like forever, she felt a glimmer of hope. The courtroom was eerily quiet after Judge Hill announced the recess. Jason and Karen Blake exchanged tense glances, their polished facade starting to crack. Meanwhile, Ariana sat in Judge Hill's chambers, the warm and inviting space in stark contrast to the cold tension outside. The young girl perched on the edge of the couch, her hands tightly gripping the fabric of her dress as she waited for the judge to speak. Judge Hill entered and closed the door behind her, setting a glass of water on the coffee table in front of Ariana. She sat in the chair across from her, her expression calm but serious. "Ariana, thank you for coming with me," she began, her voice gentle. "I want to talk to you without anyone else in the room. You're safe here, and you can tell me anything. Do you understand?" Ariana nodded hesitantly, her gaze fixed on her hands. She didn't dare look up. The judge leaned forward slightly, her tone softening even more. "You're very brave to be here today. But I need to know, how do you feel about living with the Blakes? You can be honest with me." Ariana hesitated. She opened her mouth to speak, but no words came out. Her lips trembled, and a tear slid down her cheek. Finally, she whispered, "I don't like it." Judge Hill's heart ached at the sight of the trembling girl in front of her. "Can you tell me why, sweetheart?" she asked, her voice steady but kind. Ariana's small voice broke the silence. "They're not nice to me," she said, her words halting and heavy with emotion. "They yell at me all the time. And they lock me in a dark room if I do something wrong." Judge Hill's stomach turned. She forced herself to remain composed for Ariana's sake. "That must have been very scary for you," she said gently. "How long would they keep you in the dark?" Ariana shrugged slightly, her eyes glistening with tears. "Sometimes a few hours. Sometimes all night." Judge Hill leaned back, taking a deep breath to calm the anger rising within her. "Ariana, you did the right thing by telling me this. No one should ever treat you that way. You are so brave for speaking up." Ariana looked up at the judge for the first time, her wide, tear-filled eyes searching for reassurance. "They told me not to tell anyone," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "They said no one would believe me." Judge Hill's expression softened further. She reached out and gently placed her hand over Ariana's. "I believe you," she said firmly. "And I promise, you're safe now. No one will hurt you again." The girl's small shoulders relaxed slightly, though she still seemed unsure. Judge Hill knew this was only the beginning of Ariana's road to safety and healing. She reached for her desk phone and dialed Carrie Watson, the social worker overseeing Ariana's case. "Carrie," Judge Hill said once the line connected, her tone brisk, "I need you in my chambers immediately. And please notify law enforcement, we need officers here as soon as possible. This is an urgent matter." While Ariana remained in the safety of Judge Hill's chambers, the judge returned to the courtroom, her face a mask of professional determination. Jason and Karen Blake stood as she entered, their nervous energy palpable. "Mr. and Mrs. Blake," Judge Hill began, her voice sharp, "there have been serious allegations made against you regarding your treatment of Ariana Collins. Effective immediately, Ariana will not be returning to your care." Karen gasped, her hand flying to her chest. "Your Honor, this is absurd. Ariana is lying. She's a troubled child, she makes things up." Jason chimed in, his tone defensive. "We've done nothing but provide for her. This is completely unfair." Judge Hill raised her hand, silencing them. "Enough. The court takes all allegations of abuse very seriously. Until a thorough investigation is conducted, you will have no contact with Ariana. Bailiff, please escort Mr. and Mrs. Blake out of the courtroom." The Blakes erupted into protests as they were led out, their polished facades now entirely shattered. Judge Hill turned to Carrie Watson, who had entered moments earlier. "Ms. Watson, please ensure that Ariana is placed in a safe environment immediately." Back in the judge's chambers, Ariana sat quietly, hugging a pillow as Carrie entered the room. The social worker crouched down to Ariana's level, offering a warm smile. "Hi, Ariana. My name is Carrie. I'm here to make sure you're okay and to help find a place where you'll be safe." Ariana nodded, her grip on the pillow loosening slightly. Carrie's gentle demeanor seemed to put her at ease. Judge Hill joined them, kneeling next to Carrie. "Ariana, I want you to know that you're very brave. Today, you took the first step toward a better life." Ariana looked up, her lips forming a small, tentative smile. For the first time in months, she felt a glimmer of hope that things might finally get better. As Ariana sat in the safety of Judge Hill's chambers, the wheels of justice began turning. The courtroom outside had emptied, leaving only a tense silence in its wake. Carrie Watson, the social worker assigned to Ariana's case, was already on the phone, coordinating with law enforcement and child protective services. Meanwhile, Judge Hill meticulously reviewed the case files, her mind racing with the implications of what Ariana had revealed. Carrie sat across from Ariana, her tone gentle but focused. "Ariana," she began, "I know this is hard, but I need to ask you a few questions. Can you help me understand what's been happening at home?" Ariana clutched the pillow in her lap, her fingers tightening around the fabric. "They don't like me," she whispered. "They say I'm a burden." Carrie's heart sank, but she maintained her calm demeanor. "I'm so sorry you've had to hear those things, Ariana. You don't deserve that. Can you tell me about the dark room you mentioned earlier?" Ariana hesitated before nodding. "It's in the basement," she said softly. "There's no light, just a little mattress on the floor. They put me there when I make mistakes, if I spill something or forget to clean up." Carrie exchanged a grim glance with Judge Hill, who had paused her work to listen. "Ariana," Carrie continued gently, "can you show me where they hurt you?" The girl hesitated, then slowly rolled up the sleeve of her dress, revealing faint scars on her arms. Judge Hill's jaw tightened at the sight, her expression one of restrained fury. Carrie leaned in closer, her voice soft but determined. "Thank you for showing me, Ariana. You're so brave." A knock at the door broke the somber atmosphere. Judge Hill stood to open it, revealing two uniformed police officers. The lead officer, Detective Mark Randall, was a tall, composed man in his early 40s with a calm but authoritative presence. "Your Honor," he greeted, his voice steady, "we're here to investigate the allegations." Judge Hill nodded, stepping aside to let them in. "This is Ariana Collins," she said, gesturing to the girl. "She's been incredibly brave in sharing her story. The Blakes are currently in custody, and I've issued a temporary protective order to keep them away from her." Detective Randall approached Ariana with a kind smile. He crouched down to her level, his tone gentle. "Hi, Ariana. I'm Detective Randall. I'm here to make sure you're safe. Do you feel up to answering a few questions?" Ariana hesitated but nodded, her small voice steady. "Okay." As the investigation unfolded, officers were dispatched to the Blakes' home to search for evidence. The house, located in an affluent neighborhood, appeared pristine on the surface. However, what they discovered behind closed doors painted a much darker picture. In the basement, they found the room Ariana had described, a small, windowless space with a thin mattress on the floor. The officers photographed the scene, noting the absence of any lighting or comforts. Locked cabinets in the kitchen contained Ariana's belongings, suggesting she had limited access to her own things. One officer shook his head, muttering under his breath, "This is beyond neglect." Upstairs, they uncovered documents that hinted at the Blakes' financial troubles. Receipts for Ariana's care had been submitted to foster agencies, yet it was clear the money had been spent elsewhere, on expensive furniture, designer clothing, and lavish vacations. It was a classic case of exploitation, and the evidence was damning. Back in Judge Hill's chambers, Ariana sat quietly as Carrie reassured her. "The officers are going to make sure the Blakes can't hurt you anymore," Carrie said. "You're going to stay with a safe family while we figure everything out." Ariana's eyes widened. "A new family?" she asked, her voice trembling. Carrie nodded with a gentle smile. "Yes, but just for now. They're very kind people, and they've helped other kids like you before. You'll have your own room and anything you need." For the first time, Ariana's expression softened. "Will it be quiet there?" "It'll be peaceful," Carrie promised. "And no one will yell at you." Judge Hill approached, kneeling beside the girl. "Ariana," she said, her voice steady, "you've been through so much, but you've shown incredible courage. I want you to know that you're not alone. We're going to make sure you're safe and happy from now on." As the officers compiled their findings, Detective Randall returned to the courtroom to brief Judge Hill. "Your Honor," he said, handing her a folder, "we found substantial evidence of abuse and neglect. This case is airtight. The Blakes won't be walking free anytime soon." Judge Hill flipped through the photographs and reports, her resolve hardening. "Good," she said firmly. "This child deserves justice." Looking back toward her chambers, where Ariana sat with Carrie, Judge Hill felt a renewed sense of purpose. Ariana's bravery had set everything in motion, and now it was up to the system to protect her. For the first time that day, Judge Hill allowed herself a small, hopeful smile. "This is just the beginning," she murmured to herself. The courtroom buzzed with subdued tension as Judge Hill prepared for the next stage of the hearing. Ariana remained safely in the judge's chambers with Carrie Watson, while Detective Randall coordinated the investigation with his team. The weight of the evidence gathered at the Blakes' home was more damning than anyone had anticipated, and it was time to bring it into the light. When the court session resumed, Jason and Karen Blake were escorted back into the room, their polished demeanor beginning to fray at the edges. Karen clutched her handbag tightly, her face pale, while Jason's confident posture had been replaced with visible tension. Their lawyer, a tall man with a carefully neutral expression, whispered furiously to them as they took their seats. Judge Hill entered the courtroom, her gaze steely as she took her place on the bench. The silence in the room was deafening as she addressed the room. This court has received alarming new evidence regarding the treatment of Ariana Collins while under the care of Jason and Karen Blake, she began. Her voice was calm but carried an unmistakable edge. Detective Randall, please present your findings. Detective Randall stepped forward, a folder of documents in his hand. He turned to the court, his voice steady and professional. Your Honor, our investigation of the Blakes' home has revealed substantial evidence of abuse and neglect. In the basement, we discovered a small, windowless room matching Ariana's description. It contained a thin mattress and no source of light. This space was clearly used as a form of punishment. A collective gasp rippled through the courtroom. Jason shifted uncomfortably in his seat, while Karen's eyes darted nervously toward the exit as if contemplating escape. Detective Randall continued. Additionally, we found locked cabinets containing Ariana's personal belongings, which indicates restricted access to basic necessities. Financial records show significant misuse of funds intended for Ariana's care, including receipts for luxury items unrelated to her well-being. Judge Hill's expression didn't waver as she nodded for him to proceed. Do you have photographic evidence to support these claims? She asked. Yes, Your Honor, Randall replied, handing over a series of photographs. The images were passed to the judge, who reviewed them with a grim expression. The courtroom remained silent, the tension palpable. As the evidence mounted, the Blakes' lawyer stood, attempting to salvage the situation. Your Honor, he began, his tone carefully measured, my clients deny these allegations and assert that any perceived mistreatment of Ariana was unintentional. They have been under significant financial and emotional stress, which may have affected their ability to provide the level of care they intended. Judge Hill's eyes narrowed. Financial stress does not excuse locking a child in a dark room or withholding basic necessities. These actions are not only unacceptable, they are criminal. Karen finally broke her silence, her voice shrill and defensive. We took her in out of kindness. She was always difficult, always causing trouble. We did the best we could. Jason placed a hand on her arm, trying to calm her, but the damage was done. Judge Hill's gaze hardened as she spoke. Your attitude and actions are precisely why this court cannot trust you with Ariana's care. In her chambers, Ariana listened quietly as Carrie explained what was happening in the courtroom. The judge is making sure the truth comes out, Carrie said gently. Everything you've been through, it's being taken seriously. Ariana hesitated, then asked in a small voice, does that mean I don't have to go back? Carrie smiled warmly. That's exactly what it means. You're not going back to them, Ariana. Judge Hill and I will make sure of it. The relief on Ariana's face was immediate, though her shoulders still carried the weight of her past. Thank you, she whispered, her voice trembling with emotion. Back in the courtroom, Judge Hill delivered her decision. Given the overwhelming evidence of abuse and neglect, the court orders that Ariana Collins be immediately removed from the custody of Jason and Karen Blake. Furthermore, the Blakes will face criminal charges for their actions. Ariana's safety and well-being are the court's top priorities, and she will be placed in the care of Child Protective Services until a suitable placement is found. Jason and Karen erupted in protests, but their objections were drowned out by the bailiff's commands. As they were escorted out of the courtroom, the weight of justice began to settle over the room. Judge Hill turned to Detective Randall. Please ensure that all necessary charges are filed. This court will not tolerate such actions against a child. Yes, Your Honor, Randall replied, his tone resolute. Judge Hill returned to her chambers, where Ariana sat waiting with Carrie. The judge knelt beside her, her expression softening. Ariana, she said gently, you don't have to worry anymore. You're safe now. Tears welled in Ariana's eyes as she looked up at the judge. What happens next? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. You'll stay with a family who will take good care of you while we find you a permanent home, Judge Hill explained. And we'll make sure the Blakes can never hurt you, or anyone else, again. Ariana nodded, her small frame relaxing for the first time in weeks. Though her journey was far from over, she felt a flicker of hope that things were finally going to get better. Judge Hill placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder, silently vowing to see this case through to the very end. The tension of the courtroom had dissolved, but for Ariana, the weight of her experiences still clung to her small frame. Judge Hill had ensured that the Blakes were out of the picture, but now the challenge was finding Ariana a safe, nurturing environment where she could begin to heal. After the court proceedings, Carrie Watson escorted Ariana out of the courthouse and into the bright afternoon sunlight. Ariana held a small, battered backpack, her only belongings, close to her chest. Her wide eyes scanned the bustling city streets, unsure of what would come next. Carrie knelt beside her, her tone warm and reassuring. "Ariana, we're going to a safe place now," she said. "The Thompsons are a wonderful family. They've helped many children like you, and they're excited to meet you." Ariana nodded silently, clutching her backpack tighter. She had heard promises like this before, only to be let down. Still, something about Carrie's calm demeanor made her want to believe. The drive to the Thompsons' home was quiet, the hum of the car engine the only sound. When they arrived, Ariana's eyes widened at the sight of the house. It wasn't overly large, but it exuded warmth with its cheerful yellow paint and flower-lined walkway. A wooden swing hung from a sturdy tree in the front yard, swaying gently in the breeze. Tom and Lisa Thompson, a kind-looking couple in their early 40s, stood on the porch. Lisa wore a soft smile, while Tom waved warmly as they approached. "Hello, Ariana," Lisa said, kneeling to Ariana's level. "We've been looking forward to meeting you. I know this must be a little scary, but we're here to make sure you feel safe and comfortable." Tom chimed in, his voice kind but full of energy. "And we've got the comfiest room ready for you. I think you're going to love it." Ariana hesitated, studying their faces. Their smiles didn't feel forced like the Blakes had. They seemed genuine. Lisa took Ariana's hand and led her inside. The house smelled of fresh cookies, and the walls were lined with family photos and colorful artwork. Ariana followed Lisa up the stairs to her new room. When Lisa opened the door, Ariana's breath caught in her throat. The room was painted a soft lavender, with a cozy bed covered in a fluffy comforter and pillows. A small bookshelf held a few children's books, and a stuffed bear sat on the bed. On the desk by the window was a set of colored pencils and a drawing pad. "This is your space, Ariana," Lisa said gently. "You can decorate it however you like. And if there's anything you need, just let us know." Ariana stepped inside cautiously, running her fingers over the soft comforter. "Is this really mine?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Lisa nodded. "It's all yours." That evening, the Thompsons prepared a simple dinner, spaghetti and meatballs, with garlic bread and a salad. Ariana sat at the dining table, her movements tentative, as though she were afraid to make a mistake. Tom noticed and spoke up with a light-hearted tone. "You know," he said, leaning closer, "Lisa makes the best spaghetti in town, but don't tell her I said that, or her head will get too big." Ariana's lips twitched into a small smile, the first one they had seen. Lisa pretended to scold Tom, making Ariana giggle softly. The couple exchanged a glance, silently celebrating the small victory. As the meal went on, Ariana began to relax. She even spoke a little, answering Tom's questions about her favorite colors and Lisa's inquiries about what foods she liked. For the first time in a long while, Ariana felt a flicker of normalcy. Later that evening, as Ariana settled into her new room, Carrie arrived with an envelope. She handed it to Ariana with a warm smile. "This is from Judge Hill," she said. "She wanted to make sure you got it." Ariana carefully opened the envelope and pulled out a handwritten note. "Dear Ariana, I want you to know how proud I am of your bravery. You've been through so much, but you've shown incredible strength. Remember, you are never alone. People like Carrie, the Thompsons, and myself are here to support you every step of the way. You are safe now, and you deserve all the happiness this world has to offer. With care, Judge Hill. Ariana held the note close to her chest, her eyes filling with tears, not of sadness, but of relief and gratitude. For the first time, she felt like someone truly cared about her, and it gave her a sense of hope she hadn't known before. As she lay in bed that night, the soft glow of a nightlight casting gentle shadows on the walls, Ariana stared up at the ceiling. For the first time in years, she felt a sense of calm. The warmth of the Thompsons' home, the kindness of Carrie, and the unwavering support of Judge Hill wrapped around her like a protective blanket. She closed her eyes, her grip on the stuffed bear tightening slightly. Ariana didn't know what the future held, but for the first time, she dared to believe it might be something good. The days that followed Ariana's arrival at the Thompsons' home were unlike anything she had experienced before. Gone were the tense silences and harsh punishments that had defined her life with the Blakes. In their place was an environment filled with warmth, patience, and small acts of kindness that began to chip away at the walls Ariana had built around herself. Ariana woke up early on her first morning in the Thompsons' home, unsure of what was expected of her. She tiptoed downstairs, her footsteps barely making a sound on the polished wood floors. She found Lisa in the kitchen, humming softly as she prepared breakfast. "Good morning, Ariana," Lisa said with a warm smile. "Did you sleep well?" Ariana nodded hesitantly, her eyes darting to the table where a plate of pancakes, scrambled eggs, and fresh fruit was already set out for her. "Is this, for me?" she asked quietly. Lisa laughed softly. "Of course it is. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day, you know." Ariana took a seat, her movements cautious, as if afraid she might do something wrong. Lisa noticed and sat down across from her. "Ariana, you don't have to be afraid here," she said gently. "This is your home now, and you're a part of our family." The words were simple, but they carried a weight that made Ariana's eyes sting with unshed tears. She nodded, taking a tentative bite of her pancake, and for the first time, allowed herself to relax just a little. Over the next few weeks, Ariana began to adjust to her new life. Tom and Lisa made a point to include her in everything, from family movie nights to trips to the park. They never pushed her to talk about her past but instead created a safe space where she felt comfortable opening up in her own time. One afternoon, while helping Lisa bake cookies in the kitchen, Ariana paused mid-stir. "Can I ask you something?" she said softly. "Of course," Lisa replied, looking up from the tray she was preparing. "Why do you and Tom want to help me?" Ariana's voice was hesitant, her eyes fixed on the bowl in front of her. Lisa set down the tray and knelt beside Ariana, meeting her gaze. "Because everyone deserves to feel safe and loved, especially you," she said. "We're here because we care about you, Ariana, and we want to help you see how amazing you are." Ariana blinked, her lips trembling slightly. For the first time, she allowed herself to believe that Lisa's words might be true. One afternoon, Carrie Watson stopped by to check on Ariana's progress. She was greeted warmly by the Thompsons and found Ariana in the backyard, sitting under a tree with a drawing pad in her lap. "Hi, Ariana," Carrie said as she approached. "What are you working on?" Ariana held up the drawing, a colorful picture of a house surrounded by flowers and trees. "It's this house," she explained. "It's so pretty, I wanted to draw it." Carrie smiled, sitting beside her. "You're very talented," she said. "How are you feeling here? Is everything okay?" Ariana hesitated for a moment, then nodded. "It's nice," she said quietly. "They're nice." "I'm so glad to hear that," Carrie replied. "You deserve to be in a place where you feel safe." Ariana looked down at her drawing, her voice soft. "Thank you for helping me." Carrie placed a gentle hand on her shoulder. "You've done the hardest part, Ariana. You've been brave, and that's what matters most." As Ariana settled into her new life, she began to share more about her experiences with the Blakes. One evening, during dinner, she told Tom and Lisa about the dark room they used to lock her in. Her voice was steady, but her hands trembled slightly as she spoke. Tom set down his fork, his expression one of quiet anger, not at Ariana but at the people who had hurt her. "That should have never happened to you," he said firmly. "No one deserves to be treated that way." Lisa reached over and gently held Ariana's hand. "You're so strong, Ariana," she said. "And you never have to go through anything like that again. Not while you're with us." Ariana nodded, her chest feeling lighter with each word. Sharing her pain was difficult, but it also made her feel less alone. One evening, Ariana received another letter from Judge Hill. She opened it carefully, her eyes scanning the handwritten words. "Dear Ariana, I've been thinking about you and wanted to check in. I hope you're feeling safe and happy with the Thompsons. Remember, your bravery is what made this all possible. You've inspired so many people, including me. Never forget how strong you are. With care, Judge Hill." Ariana smiled as she folded the letter. She placed it in her desk drawer alongside the first one, feeling a sense of connection to the people who had fought for her. For the first time, she began to believe that she wasn't just a burden, she was someone worth fighting for. Each day brought small victories for Ariana. She laughed more, slept better, and began to dream of a future where she could truly be happy. The Thompsons never rushed her healing, instead letting her find her own way. With every passing moment, Ariana grew stronger, her spirit slowly mending. Though her journey wasn't over, Ariana was no longer defined by the pain of her past. In the Thompsons' home, surrounded by love and kindness, she began to see herself as something more than a survivor. She was a young girl with a bright future ahead, and she was finally free to embrace it. Weeks had passed since Ariana began living with the Thompsons. The once timid and guarded 11-year-old had started to show glimpses of her vibrant personality. Though the scars of her past hadn't completely healed, Ariana began to realize she was in a place where she could finally breathe without fear. Still, the road to recovery was far from smooth. One crisp morning, Ariana stood in front of the mirror in her new room, smoothing out the pleats of her skirt. Today was her first day at her new school, and though she had settled somewhat into the Thompsons' home, the idea of walking into a room full of strangers filled her with anxiety. Lisa appeared in the doorway, holding a packed lunch bag with Ariana's name written on it in neat, cursive letters. "Ready for the big day?" Lisa asked with a smile. Ariana hesitated. What if they don't like me?" she asked, her voice trembling slightly. Lisa walked over, kneeling down to meet Ariana's gaze. "You are smart, kind, and brave," she said gently. "Anyone would be lucky to have you as a friend. And if you get nervous, just remember, you're not alone. We're all rooting for you." Ariana nodded, clutching the straps of her backpack. "Okay," she whispered, drawing strength from Lisa's words. The school day began with introductions in her homeroom class. Ariana's teacher, a friendly woman named Mrs. Carter, welcomed her warmly. "Class, this is Ariana Collins," she announced. "She's new, so let's all make her feel welcome." Ariana offered a shy smile, feeling the weight of the curious stares from her classmates. She took a seat near the back, keeping her head down and her hands folded tightly on her desk. Throughout the day, a few kids tried to strike up conversations, but Ariana's answers were brief and guarded. She wasn't used to this kind of attention, and she couldn't shake the fear of being judged or mistreated. It was easier to stay quiet. During lunch, Ariana sat alone under a tree in the schoolyard, picking at her sandwich. She was used to solitude, but the sound of laughter and chatter around her reminded her how much she longed to belong. A girl with curly brown hair and bright eyes approached her, holding a tray of food. "Hi," the girl said cheerfully. "I'm Emily. Can I sit with you?" Ariana blinked, unsure of how to respond. Okay," she said quietly. Emily plopped down beside her, unbothered by Ariana's hesitation. "That's a cool drawing pad," she said, nodding toward the sketchbook sticking out of Ariana's bag. "Do you like to draw?" Ariana nodded, a small smile creeping onto her face. Yeah. It helps me think. Can I see? Emily asked, her tone genuinely curious. Ariana hesitated but eventually pulled out the sketchbook, flipping to a page with a drawing of a house surrounded by flowers. This is my new home, she explained. It's nice. Emily's eyes lit up. That's amazing. You're really good at this. I can't even draw stick figures, she joked, making Ariana giggle. For the first time that day, Ariana felt a sense of connection. It was small, but it was a start. That evening, as the Thompsons sat down for dinner, Tom asked Ariana about her day. So, how was it? Did you survive? He teased lightly. Ariana smiled faintly, nodding. It was okay, she said. I met someone. Her name's Emily. Tom raised his eyebrows in mock surprise. A friend already? That's impressive. Lisa chimed in, her tone warm. That's wonderful, Ariana. Tell us more about her. As Ariana recounted her conversation with Emily, her words grew more confident. She even laughed when describing Emily's jokes, her eyes lighting up in a way Tom and Lisa hadn't seen before. It was a moment of pure joy, and the Thompsons silently celebrated the progress Ariana was making. Later that week, Judge Hill stopped by the Thompsons' home for a follow-up visit. Ariana greeted her shyly at first but quickly warmed up as the judge asked about her new life. How are you feeling, Ariana? Judge Hill asked, her tone kind and genuine. Ariana thought for a moment before answering. Better, she said softly. The Thompsons are really nice. And I made a friend at school. Judge Hill smiled, her heart swelling with pride. That's wonderful to hear. You've come such a long way, Ariana, and I'm so proud of you. Ariana beamed at the praise, her confidence growing with each passing day. That night, Ariana sat at her desk, staring at a blank page in her sketchbook. She picked up a pencil and began to draw, her strokes deliberate and full of emotion. When she was finished, she looked at the image, a girl standing under a bright sun, surrounded by flowers, her face turned up in a smile. She tore out the page and brought it downstairs, handing it to Lisa. I made this, she said simply. Lisa took the drawing, her eyes welling up with tears as she admired the joyful image. It's beautiful, Ariana. Just like you. For Ariana, the drawing wasn't just art, it was a symbol of her new beginning, a reminder that she was no longer defined by her past. She was finally finding her place in the world, and it was a place filled with hope, love, and the promise of brighter days ahead. Months had passed since Ariana first came to live with the Thompsons. The shy, cautious girl who had once walked on eggshells was now blossoming into a vibrant, confident young person. With every passing day, she grew stronger, her spirit slowly mending in the warmth of her new home. Yet, one final chapter remained in Ariana's journey, her adoption hearing. The courtroom felt different this time, not cold and intimidating as it had been during her first appearance, but full of promise. Ariana sat between Tom and Lisa, her small hands clutching theirs tightly. She wore a light blue dress that Lisa had helped her pick out, her hair neatly braided with small, colorful clips. Judge Hill entered the courtroom and smiled warmly as she saw Ariana. This hearing was one of her favorites, a chance to celebrate a child finding a forever home. She took her seat and looked down at the family before her. Good morning, everyone, Judge Hill began, her tone soft but full of authority. Today, we're here to finalize the adoption of Ariana Collins by Tom and Lisa Thompson. Ariana, how are you feeling? Ariana hesitated for only a moment before answering, her voice clear and steady. Happy, she said with a small smile, glancing up at Tom and Lisa. Judge Hill turned her attention to Tom and Lisa. Mr. and Mrs. Thompson, do you wish to formally adopt Ariana as your daughter and commit to her care, well-being, and happiness? Tom straightened in his seat, his voice strong and unwavering. Absolutely, Your Honor. Ariana is already part of our family, and we're honored to make it official. Lisa nodded, her voice trembling slightly with emotion. "We love her with all our hearts. She's brought so much joy into our lives, and we're committed to giving her the love and support she deserves." Judge Hill's gaze softened as she turned back to Ariana. "Ariana, do you want Tom and Lisa to be your mom and dad?" Ariana looked up at them, her eyes glistening. She nodded firmly. "Yes, I do." The courtroom fell silent as Judge Hill signed the adoption decree. She looked up, a warm smile spreading across her face. "It is my great honor to declare that Ariana Collins is now officially Ariana Thompson. Congratulations to the Thompson family." Applause erupted in the courtroom as tears streamed down Lisa's face. Tom pulled Ariana into a tight embrace, his eyes misty with pride and love. Ariana held on to them both, her heart swelling with a sense of belonging she had never known before. After the hearing, the Thompsons hosted a small celebration at their home. Friends, neighbors, and even Carrie Watson came to share in the joy of the day. The house was filled with laughter, the scent of freshly baked cookies, and the sound of children playing in the yard. Ariana moved through the gathering with a newfound confidence, proudly introducing herself as Ariana Thompson. She even showed her drawings to Carrie and Judge Hill, who marveled at her talent and creativity. "You've come so far, Ariana," Judge Hill said, her voice filled with pride. "And this is just the beginning. The world is wide open for you now." As the evening wound down, Lisa called Ariana into the living room. Tom held a small, wrapped box in his hands. "We have something for you," he said with a grin. Ariana took the box, her curiosity piqued. Carefully, she unwrapped it to reveal a silver necklace with a delicate heart-shaped pendant. Inside the pendant was a tiny engraving, "Forever loved, forever ours." Tears welled in Ariana's eyes as she looked up at Tom and Lisa. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. Tom knelt beside her, clasping the necklace around her neck. "This is a reminder that no matter what happens, you'll always be part of our family." That night, as Ariana lay in bed, she touched the pendant around her neck and smiled. Her room, once a foreign place, now felt like home. The Thompsons had given her not just a family but a foundation of love and support that would carry her into the future. As she closed her eyes, Ariana thought of how far she had come, from the fear and darkness of her past to the light and hope of her present. She drifted off to sleep with a sense of peace, knowing that she was no longer alone. She had found her place in the world, and it was filled with love, happiness, and the promise of endless possibilities. This story is a testament to the power of bravery and love. Ariana's journey reminds us that even in the darkest moments, hope can lead to a brighter future. Her courage to speak out and the kindness of those who stepped up to protect her transformed her life in ways she never imagined. It's a powerful reminder that every child deserves safety, love, and the chance to thrive. If this story moved you as much as it did me, please like this video and subscribe to the channel for more inspiring stories. And let us know in the comments, what did you think of Ariana's journey? We'd love to hear your thoughts.